back in the 20-teens, when the internet began shifting from horror content like creepypastas and realistic paranormal videos, there was a boom in creators getting very experimental with the type of plots they explored, the mediums, and then even the platform in which they presented their stories. For a long time, YouTube, video-based mediums, and long-form blog or story format was kind of the way to go. One of the most interesting and arguably hard to pull off platforms for telling unfiction and ARG stories is through written, text-based social media sites like Facebook and Twitter. Popular ARGs at the time like CHSS, Hi Mary Mary, and even Marble Hornets utilized Twitter, but only as a supplement to their filmed content. It was never the main avenue of telling the story. It was kind of an added bonus for people who wanted to get very, very involved in the story. It wasn't until the late 20-teens when a few fully Twitter-based unfiction narratives began to appear. Arguably the most notable was The Sun Vanished, a Twitter account run by a very frightened individual who was pleading with anyone who could hear him that the sun had seemingly vanished, and it goes from there. It sounds very simple, but it was very effective, and Twitter was a really interesting way to tell that story, and they utilized photo and video posts on Twitter to tell the story, so there was visual elements, but all, that was within what Twitter could give you. My favorite was one called Gregory88. I'll have to verify the exact handle. It was a Twitter narrative that followed a man who inherited a family member's lake house and documented essentially just chaos ensuing around it, and that felt like something that could be told through a book or a movie or very traditional means, but it was a much richer experience to see it on Twitter. So whereas I think The Sun Vanished, Twitter is the only way that you could tell that in the way that they told it, Gregory is an example of just getting really creative with what could have been a very basic short story and telling it, using the platform to make it original. You clicked on the video, I'm not talking about The Sun Vanished or Gregory. No. We're talking Teletubbies. Hello, my name is Glitchwitch.jpg. I like to tell stories and analyze internet horror, ranging from creepypastas, ARGs, analog horror, all that kind of stuff. I seem to have gotten into the trend of talking about older internet horror beloveds like Carmen Winstead and 11BX 1371. I think I said it. But also, I really love analog horror. That's something very near and dear to me. I have a tattoo of The Intruder from the Mandela catalog, so I'm that level of insane. If you're new here, welcome. If you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe. If you're back, welcome back. I'm so glad I didn't scare you away. I probably will today, though. The last video I made was very conceptual and made my head hurt, and I'm convinced that everything around me is an info or cognitive hazard now, so I wanted to do something a little bit lighter. And if you know about the thing I'm talking about today, you know that the fact that this is my concept of light means I'm insane. Regardless, this is something that I have thought about off and on since I experienced it, so I'm very excited that I got to deep dive on it and just kind of go back down the rabbit hole, because there's nothing like it. There really isn't. And I will say this has the added bonus of I was actually boots on the ground there. I remember watching it happen, unfold in real time, which is not something I can say for a lot of the things I covered. Usually it's things I came across later or just kind of had fed to me by, the old versions of me that have made me who I am today. It was very much a you were there or you weren't, because unfortunately this story was archived very poorly. Twitter is partially responsible for that, but we do have some sources that are great that I'll get into in a second. But, you know, let me paint the picture. Let me set the scene. It's 2017. Parody Twitters are just reigning that website. Remember Dory? Remember @Dory? If you don't, I'm so glad you don't. True crime is really starting to get more and more popular. We haven't had any think pieces or conversations about how maybe that's bad yet. I'm in college. I love Twitter. I still love that health site. You should follow me at GlitchWitchJPEG. Oh my god. But this is peak for me. Like, I met some of my dearest friends on Twitter. Like, I look back very fondly upon the 20-teens Twitter. So I'm scrolling on Twitter as I did instead of doing my assignments. I see this Twitter account called @TeletubbiesFact keep showing up on my feed. And, you know, like I said, parody Twitters were everywhere. So it wasn't shocking to me to see an account called @TeletubbiesFact tweeting like, maybe if I scream louder, God will finally hear me. You know, it's edgelord. So I just kind of rolled my eyes and moved on. But that shit blew up. And for good reason, and I started to see that there was a lot more to this than just being an edgelord. And then all of a sudden, huge creators like ReignBot and Loey were covering it. At this point, when it really started to appear on my feed and the story began to unfold, you bet your ass I tuned in, if you can call scrolling through a Twitter feed tuning in. @TeletubbiesFact is not well archived. So I have to give a huge shout out and huge thanks to my two main sources for this video, which is ReignBot, who I just love. She was a huge inspiration to me to get into this stuff. I love, you know, she taught me about a lot of these ARGs back when they were happening, as they were happening. Like I said, this was one of the rare ones that I like found on my own. And then also Loey, who I would consider kind of the, whether she wants to be or not, queen of @TeletubbiesFacts. It was not a crown she wanted. I don't think it was a crown that was thrust upon her. We will get back into that later. But they are the only archive we really have for this. I dug through like Reddit and even Twitter to try to find screenshots so that we could piece the timeline together, because I do want to give a narrative timeline before I get into my thoughts about this whole thing, because I do realize that there may be a lot of people who are younger that fully missed this and don't remember this unless you have stumbled upon ReignBot or Loey's videos. Because it was very much a flash in the pan. It was there and then it was gone. It was like a 3-month period, maybe. Huge thank you to them. All the screenshots of @TeletubbiesFacts tweets that I have in this video are taken from ReignBot and Loey's videos. The funny way to know is if it was in light mode, I took it from ReignBot. If it was in dark mode, I took it from Loey. God bless you, Loey. I'm a dark mode girly too, but you know, maybe ReignBot is now. This was like 2017, before dark mode reigned supreme, I feel like. Seriously, thank you to them. It's not like there's some underrated unknown creators. I'm sure a lot of you know who they are, but if you don't, go watch their videos on this, because it gives a good snapshot of how people were feeling at the time as this was unfolding. It's very easy for me to talk about this the way that I'm going to, with hindsight being 2020, but it was very different for people in the moment. Like, you guys that were not there for this may laugh that some people were so freaked out by this, but like, it was weird. It was a weird moment in time. So I will link their videos below. Thanks so much to them, because truly without them we would not have this really interesting piece of unfiction archived. So that's another thing I just want to say is, like, if you see something weird on the internet that seems like it's a compelling piece of narrative fiction, screenshot it, document it. We need to keep these things alive. I know Nightmind does a really good job at doing stuff like that, but we don't want these things to become lost media. It would be really sad for me personally if I could not have gone back on this journey with TeletubbiesFacts. Before I get into why I'm even bothering to resurrect, that's an in-joke if you know TeletubbiesFacts, this monstrosity 7 years later, I will go ahead and break down the entire story and timeline of @TeletubbiesFacts to explain what the this is all about. I will say I tried my best to dress appropriately. I was literally gonna like make a headband with the little circle, because with the red Teletubby. Let me Google what's that horse name? Red Teletubby. Poe! I like Poe the best because if y'all can't tell, red's my favorite color. I tried to do like a little Poe thing. I was gonna do the headband. I was literally gonna paint my face so like a Teletubby, but I was like, you know what? No, that's too much. I'm not there yet. That's gonna scare some of y'all away. So instead, I just wore red, and then TeletubbiesFacts is, if you're not familiar, it's not really about Teletubbies. It's about violence. So I went ahead and I wore my little blood choker. So, yeah, I guess content warning for graphic violence coming forward. Please don't get rid of me, YouTube. Please. I'm going to be looking down a lot for this because I literally had to write it all out. And I will provide the appropriate screenshots as well so you can see straight from TeletubbiesFacts themselves. So the first inkling of a story we get with @TeletubbiesFacts is on August 15th, 2017, when the account tweets, quote, "Look me in the eyes, Sharon. I am your husband." Sharon then appears with her own Twitter account, @SharonTeletubby, on August 27th, tweeting, "What is this account, Dave? Please stop doing this. Come home." The name for this account, @SharonTeletubby, is so beautifully stupid. Like, this is what I'm saying. This is genius. The creator of this is batting, like, 100. They're on a different planet. I cannot stress enough how genius I think that this is. I'm not being sarcastic. I want to say, I never want to make a slightly hatery video ever again in my life. After 11BX 1371, that was it. That's as mean as I ever want to get. So when it may sound like I'm being sarcastic about my love for @TeletubbiesFacts, I'm not. I love this. Like, this means so much to me. This is what I want out of internet horror. Dave, our main character, I don't want to call him a protagonist because he's about to do some things, spoiler alert, that are not very protagonisty. Dave then accuses Miss @SharonTeletubby of cheating, and we find out that the couple have children together, and that Dave is not well. I'm gonna try to avoid saying a lot of the things that Dave says with the @TeletubbiesFact Twitter, because maybe by God's graces one day I'll get 1,000 subscribers and make 5 cents off of the channel. And I'm trying, I'm holding out for that 5 cents. As this unfolds, the original TeletubbiesFacts account keeps doing the random edgy posts, intercut with flashes of the story of Dave and Sharon and their crumbling marriage, and just very blatant evidence that Dave is not well. I will say my favorite, I already mentioned it in the beginning, there is a literal in-between just horrific tweets. There's a literal tweet that just says, "Show me the Teletubbies." And again, they're playing the X Games mode. I don't know what else to say. On October 18th, we get a real big pickup in the story. Sharon's family gains control of the @SharonTeletubby account, saying that she is missing, and Dave quote retweets it saying that they will never find her. And I feel like this is originally where I started to pay attention to this account, because I was like, something's going on here. And like, well, you can look at this and say, this isn't real now. It was just a different time where you just didn't know. Like, I think a lot of us were like, well, no, this isn't real. But then we were like, but like, what if it is? So I think that's why everyone was watching. There was this morbid curiosity. The two accounts continue to go back and forth quote tweeting each other, and this culminates in a showdown between Sharon's family and Dave, resulting in the horrific murder of Sharon's family, and then Dave tweeting from the Sharon Teletubbies account. So the Sharon Teletubbies account has now passed through 3 hands. Miss Sharon, may she rest in peace. Miss Sharon's family, may they rest in peace, and then Dave, the old bastard himself. And again, it's very obvious that this is not real. This is a piece of fiction because the idea of someone live tweeting up to being brutally murdered by their son-in-law is crazy, but isn't it funny? Isn't it so funny? Like, this is a horror comedy. Emphasis on the comedy, and that's why I think it's genius. Anyway, I'm gonna continue. It starts to get a little crazy from here. Up until this point, it's been a completely text-based narrative, minus like a few scary, edgy edits of the sun baby from the Teletubbies. But Dave tweets a photo of a police car saying that he's been found. And, you know, internet sleuths who really at this point believe that maybe this could be real reverse searched it and found it on Google Images. So again, it's not real, but just run with it. It's fun. Have a good time. So now back to the Sharon account. Guess what? We have a fourth person tweeting from the Sharon account. And again, this is peak comedy to me. Do you want to know who's tweeting from the @Sharon Teletubbies account? The Utah Police. They issue a statement saying that Dave had unalived himself, and they released this statement written on an iPhone 6 Notes app. Again, I think this is comedy. Like, this isn't just, oh, it's plot holes. You can tell the difference between just a poorly done series and just insane satire. This is like peak satire of the scary ARG unfiction. Then we shortly later, get smacked in the face by a plot twist from the Utah Police using @Sharon Teletubby that Dave did not die. It was his cousin that unalived himself. Don't know who this cousin is, don't know why. They must just look alike, so they got confused. So Dave's at large. He's just out there, baby. And having a flame war with the Utah Police on Twitter. Dave then tweets an image that says, "You'll never find me," with like this scary stick figure. And this seemed to be something that like the people debunking or analyzing this really fixated on, like saying it's so scary. And like, I guess, I don't know, again, it's one thing to talk about it now when we know the end result, but at the time, yeah, it was kind of freaky because there is the question of, well, this is clearly fake, is the person creating this believing it kind of thing? And no, I don't think that's the case based on how this ends, but I get it. I get at the time it was kind of freaky because you don't know who's running this account. Loey and ReignBot both point out that the @TeletubbiesFact account was very good with deleting tweets, so there's gaps of the narrative that are literally lost to time because Loey or ReignBot didn't catch them in time. The narrative just gets a little nutso here. Like, apparently it seems that Dave goes off on a killing spree, and there are these two images posted from Dave's account of these like creepy figures where he claims that like there's a mysterious he in his house. I still don't quite know what's up with that, but those are arguably like the scariest images in the whole thing, but they really don't relate to the larger narrative, so Then Sharon account tweets that they killed Dave, and these audio of like backwards talking and screaming appear. I will say, even though the account, like the story, the plot gets a little lost at this point, the creator behind this does a good job utilizing the interactive nature of the platform of Twitter, because people start getting DMs from him, and he began DMing and also tweeting severed head images to people, including Loey Lane was one of them. She never showed this, and I don't think there's an existent archive of any of these images out there because he deleted them, and people who got them in DMs have not shared them, because obviously distressing images. I have a feeling that they're probably from movies, similar to how the gore images from Spectrogram from 11BX 1371 was probably, the gore images were probably from the movie. Right towards the end of all of this, we get a new character named Kevin, who is allegedly the last living child of Dave, and it kind of fizzles out from here, and it has an interesting reason why that happens, and really is the core of what I want to talk about. As I said, the account was DMing Loey Lane at this point, and she got very involved in the narrative and was really the one covering it in real time, but she made 3 videos about it in total. It started to freak her out, and she tweeted about how, like, she was overreacting to things in her just, like, daily life because constantly staying up to keep track of this creepy narrative was getting to her. And, like, I don't think she ever meant that, like, she thought it was real and she thought that this person was trying to harm her. It was more that she just was, like, saying, this is such an effective horror narrative, it's freaking me out. Well, because of this, the at TeletubbiesFact account ended up getting suspended. People reported it. And initially, the Sharon count that still existed, the creator came out of character and said, it's over, I can't continue it, and they kind of blamed Loey, like it was her fault that, like, she blew it up so big that it couldn't be finished and it got ruined. They later claimed that, you know, that's not true, they were just kind of reacting harshly in the moment, and they've talked to her since and they don't blame her. They were just sad to see it all come to an end. Why am I talking about this? Why? Because that's what I do. Why would you be here? That's the thing I do. But anyway, regardless, in all seriousness, I think that at TeletubbiesFact makes a fascinating case study on the life and death of a viral horror sensation. From the get-go, I do think one of the problems that led to a maybe early death of this story, or maybe even a longer life than it ever should have had, is the internet's reaction to it. It's very easy, like I said, for me to sit here 7 years later and just laugh at it and have a good time with it. And again, not in a way that I'm making fun of it whatsoever, but in a way that I think it's very, very successful at essentially being like a really, really dark, up shit post. When all the pieces are laid out in front of you, it's not like, it doesn't feel harmful, it just feels like a cohesive narrative using a very unconventional medium. And it's a lot easier to see the comedy when you have it all laid out in front of you and not just the, like, gore. The beginning was really subtle and it felt very shitposty, but then as the narrative continued, I feel like it became more horror-based in conjunction with how the audience was reacting to it. And I think the problem is that the viewers or readers, whatever you want to call them because it is Twitter-based, they fixated way too much on the horror element, and the charm of the earlier tweets went away around the time that, like, after Sharon's family got killed. And I think that, like, I don't want to put words in the mouth of the creator, but I want to assume that probably the idea was to make this very jokey, make it very shitposty, and then kind of want to punch you in the face with it ending with the creator of this TeletubbiesFacts account being a family annihilator. Like, that's dumb and scary, and I think that's a logical ending, but the reception was so huge, I get why they wanted to continue it, but I think there was not a concrete plan to continue it, and that's something they even said when they were kind of shitting on Loey in that moment, that it started as a joke and he just had to kind of make it up as they went along. And again, I don't blame the creator for this. I think when you get eyes on something as the way that this did, as big as this got in such a short amount of time, you want to keep people watching happy, and you want to keep them engaged, and you kind of want to capture that for as long as you can, because especially with something like this where you're an anonymous person, no one knows who you are, you don't know if you can ever capture an audience like this again. So I absolutely understand why it kept going, but I think because of that, it was kind of doomed to fail once it hit that point. And in general, Twitter is a medium that's going to be more prone to a rapid spiral like this because the content is inherently so rapid fire. Whereas, you know, YouTube-based ARGs and nonfiction are automatically given a little bit more grace from viewers because there's knowledge that, oh, it takes time to produce a video. Even stuff that, you know, people were believing was maybe real, like Ash vlogs and stuff like that, there was still the realistic assumption of, oh, this girl has to live her life and film the vlogs. Obviously now, with blatant fictional stuff like analog and digital horror, you know, people have been patiently waiting for the new Wall and Files, which is coming out next month, with the knowledge that, hey, this one guy is animating all of this stuff and it's going to take him a long time. We know this isn't real. Obviously, it's a narrative piece of fiction. And there's an understanding of, oh, I have to wait for this thing I like. The same way that we'd wait for video games and movies and books in real life, but on the internet, sometimes people give people a harder time about, oh, it's been so long, we need this, we need this. Twitter, it's just, you can demand updates, and you can expect more rapid updates. So I think that also was kind of something that they were going to have to battle from the get as well, and there was no time to like pause and say, where do I want this story to go? They just had to continue it. There was no choice, there was no waiting, there was no pausing, because they could have lost interest in the time that it took them. I think that this is why you don't see social media based unfiction projects like this anymore. You don't see Twitter narratives, you don't see even on TikTok. I feel like they're not as successful as they are on YouTube, because even then there's, you know, an expectation that you can put out a TikTok quicker than a YouTube video, which isn't necessarily true. But I've seen ARGs try to happen on TikTok, and they just don't seem to work the same way that they do on YouTube. So I think the fast paced social media is it's not a good place for these stories, because it puts way too much pressure on the creator. It's kind of a like damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you script everything beforehand and the audience doesn't react in the way that you expect, you could disappoint them by continuing with your script, or you have to abandon your script. And if you wing it, there's a chance you'll lose the plot and everything will get out of hand, kind of like what happened with TeletubbiesFacts. In any form of media, you know, there's countless examples of the story going longer than it needs to, because there's virality around the project. Like, do we need season 5 of Stranger Things? Do we need a second Squid Game? No. But we're gonna get them because they went viral. TeletubbiesFacts couldn't have existed in any other format than Twitter. The ability to be there, like, along for the ride in real time, like seconds apart, was really special as a viewer. And of course, it was too crazy to be real. Like I said, we all knew it wasn't real. There were huge plot holes and just a lack of logic, like I said, with Live Tweet getting murdered. But the nature of the just minute by minute updates made it feel exciting, and it just felt new, I think. There was a sense of this individual is a loose cannon, and, you know, like I said earlier, at this point, true crime was really huge, and we hadn't started to have the discussions as much about that maybe it's inappropriate to consume true crime media the way we were in the 20-teens. So a narrative like this was just prime moment for something like this. And, you know, in the instance of TeletubbiesFacts, I don't blame the people that were analyzing it and creating content around it either. I know Loey, like, really took it hard when this all kind of came crumbling down, and she really blamed herself, but it's just a really specific situation, and it was kind of doomed from a certain point. TeletubbiesFacts was tweeting some really gnarly stuff that, even though it wasn't true, there was going to be a point where someone stumbled across this and truly did think it was real and is going to report it because they're scared and they think it's not appropriate for Twitter. There's a really weird symbiotic relationship that horror creators and, like, analysis YouTube have, and they often need each other to succeed. And I'm not talking about, like, little YouTubers like me. I'm not going to get anyone's project out there the way that your Wendigoons and your ReignBots and your Nightminds are. But sometimes smaller creators are reliant on these people to get their narrative out there. There are so many ARGs and unfiction I never would have heard of if it wasn't for big YouTubers, because it's just hard to find these things. The internet is a really vast place. And then at the same time, you know, these YouTubers need to seek out this content, or they don't necessarily have content to make. I think it's shifted a little bit with creators like Wendigoon, who that's just some of the stuff he does. He also covers history and different things like that. But then you have creators like Nightmind, where, like, that his mission is to find underrepresented creators and get their name out there, which is really cool. But it is, like, they need each other. I'm sure that it gets a little muddy and strange when the analyst almost becomes part of the story, because a lot of people will then associate that YouTuber with the narrative, which is unfair to the creator, but it's also not the YouTuber's fault. Like, that clearly happened here with Loey and TeletubbiesFacts. I know that happened with Nightmind and Jack Torrance. He literally became part of the narrative. Like, he traveled to become part of the story, which is like nuts. And like at that point it gets a little scary because it gets a little too real. Especially I can't, like, I've seen the Nightmind stuff on Jack Torrance. I can't imagine literally walking around like abandoned buildings because some stranger on the internet is leaving me messages. Like, you know that like the person behind it isn't actually like killing people or whatever, but it's still scary. It puts you in a very vulnerable position. And so I get why Loey Lane got freaked out. Even if TeletubbiesFacts didn't mean her any harm, it's still weird to get images of severed heads in your Twitter DMs, even if it's a joke. Again, I don't know who created TeletubbiesFacts. I'm not sure who is behind this, but they clearly are super talented and they have a flair for horror and comedy. And so I hope they're out there making more fun horror for us. Maybe they are and we just don't even know it. I think that this phenomena of a comedy horror internet story being blown out of proportion, it has happened again. I think Gilbert Garfield is kind of the modern equivalent of this, where I think people just interpret it incorrectly. I see so many thumbnails for Gilbert Garfield analysis videos that are like, the darkest analog horror ever, and it's like, dog, it's Gilbert Garfield. Like, please be serious. And I really want to make a video about Gilbert Garfield because I think it's genius, the same way that I think this is genius. I think successful comedy horror is usually dark and kind of up, and it makes people uncomfortable, but that's what makes it successful. Did Teletubbies go a little far with some of their tweets? Maybe, but if they weren't over the top, would they have gotten noticed? Would it have gotten any attention? So we may not even be talking about this right now if they had been a little more tame. So, do y'all remember TeletubbiesFacts? Were you there? Were you boots on the ground for this when it happened? Did it freak you out initially? Because I won't lie to you, like, I thought it was funny once I really sat and thought about it, but like, yeah, it freaked me out a little bit in the moment. And are there any other Twitter-based ARGs that you remember that besides the ones that I mentioned? Because I'm sure there may be some out there that I just don't remember. I would love to know about them. And, you know, in general, if there are any weird internet relics that you remember from years past, please let me know. I'd love to cover them. I don't have to have been there in the moment to cover something. I would love to research something that, you know, was important to y'all at one point and just get it out there so we can all kind of walk down memory lane, because I love learning new things. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this trip down TeletubbiesFacts memory lane. TeletubbiesFacts, if you're out there, please keep creating hilarious, scary art. Follow, like, it's subscribe, not follow. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Follow my Twitter at glitchwitchjpeg. Seriously, if there's anything you would like me to talk about, let me know. Like, I have lists and lists of things I can cover, but I really would like to know what you guys would like me to cover, because I never planned on doing more, I don't want to say retro because it wasn't that long ago, but then again, like 2017 was 7 years ago. You know, older internet mysteries and internet horror that seems to be hitting well with audiences, which I get. I mean, you know, there can only be so many analog horror and analysis videos. So I don't want to fall into just doing that when there are better people to do that than me. So please let me know anything you would like to hear me talk about. I'd love to research some old weird shit on the old internet. So again, thank you for watching. Don't be like Dave. And tell me what your favorite Teletubby is below, I guess. Po Nation. You better come to bat for me. Okay, bye.